Hello, and welcome to Good Medicine and our talk on detox today. The reason I chose detox is because I think it's one of the most misunderstood aspects of our health. Even I, at times, do not put enough emphasis on it, but at the same time, I wanted to let my viewer, my patient, know that there's not a lot of magic associated with it, in that it is really a daily decision about detox. So when we say detox, that word really needs to be defined. What is detox? When we hear that, you need to get these special kind of colon cleanses to get detox. You need to eat the special foods or do these special 7 to 10 day packages for detox. And actually, detox is an everyday process for all of us. And we shouldn't wait to detox every 6 months. We should be making choices each day that really lead to detox. So when we're talking about detox, we're really talking about two things. So detox is biotransformation plus elimination. So really, that's what we're talking about. Two aspects of detoxification is, one, you have to take your toxins and you have to transform them from something that's not water soluble, which is fat soluble, or we have to move them to and then once we have made that transition from a fat soluble substance to a water soluble substance, then we have to eliminate it. So let's go into that a little bit, but first we need to really identify what are toxins. What are the things that we need to biotransform and then eliminate? And I think some real easy ones to remember as far as toxins are things like mercury, pesticides. That's why organic foods become so important. A big one that we'll talk about a little bit later is medications. Every medication we take needs to be detoxified. Our body has not been introduced to a lot of these substances, so I'm really impressed with the body's way of seeing things it's never seen evolutionarily and then turning it into something we can get rid of. Something that we don't think of a lot of times is hormones. Hormones are fantastic. I love hormones. I like to use them in my practice, but if we are not eliminating and getting rid of them, they can turn into things that can be toxic. Foods, a lot of foods. The reason charcoal meats are so bad is that they are actually, they upregulate something I'll be talking about shortly, which is phase 1. And they also have their own toxin, carcinogens that are in there. And so charcoal foods are not bad, but we have to make sure we pair them with something that's going to help us get rid of them. And I'll talk about some things we can do with that. Another things that we can think about are cigarettes. We all know cigarettes are toxins. Toxins also are things like sugar. When we talk about foods, sugar is probably one of the bigger toxins because it creates a lot of excess energy, and that energy creates byproducts. When we talk about sugar too, we're talking about the ability of the mitochondria to take that energy and take that sugar and turn it into energy. And so you're going to see toxins, no matter how well the machine is working, which is our body, you're always going to have toxin production. So what do we do with these toxins? Now that we've identified what are some things that are toxins here, what are we going to do with them? And so we have to think of the biotransformation phase. And so this is a really interesting thing. There's basically in the liver cells itself, 2 phases of detoxification. There is in the liver, you're going to have phase 1. And you're going to have, that's going to go over to phase 2, okay? So phase 1 takes these toxins, whether it's mercury, hormones, other substances, and these are actually fat-soluble toxins. These are toxins which are going to store in the fat if we don't get rid of them. And so that is one area that fat does serve a very active role in our body, is the storing away of toxins. And we will also go into why when we lose weight, those toxins have to go somewhere when we shrink those fat cells. And so detoxification takes on a big role here. So we go from fat soluble here to water soluble. So we go from fat soluble to water soluble, and when we're talking about going from phase 1 to phase 2, we have to change that fat soluble to something that is actually able to take a methyl group, a sulfur hydroxy group, or a acetyl group, or something that takes it from fat soluble to water soluble. And in the meantime, we have to almost give it a sticky surface so those things can bind to the fat soluble and make it water soluble, and that's the intermediate step. So if you upregulate phase 1, this is upregulated, you're actually going to create intermediates. Which go to phase 2, but these are actually more toxic a lot of times than the toxins you're trying to get rid of. So when we're talking about detoxification, phase 1 and phase 2, we're talking about taking something that's toxic, making it even more toxic, and then making it non-toxic so that we can get rid of it. And so we have to be sure that when we're doing things to increase phase 1, which is eating char-grilled meat, smoking, sometimes just doing fruits and vegetables actually upgrade phase 1. When we do fasting or limit our caloric intake, quite honestly, most anything upregulates phase 1. But if we don't have the appropriate phase 2 reaction, then we have more toxins. And so when we have more toxins, then it gets redistributed throughout the body, and we have more damage. So if we don't create both a phase 1 upregulation, and that's why I don't like, we're going to do 7 days juice cleanse, because you really are upregulating phase 1. And if you're not upregulating phase 2 at the same time, then you're going to have trouble. And some vegetables, especially the brassica family, like broccoli, actually work on phase 1 and phase 2. So if we're always upregulating phase 1, eating processed food, a lot of inflammatory foods, and we're not doing things that upregulate phase 2, not getting good protein sources, then we're going to be stuck with a lot more toxins than we started with in some cases. So stress plays a role in phase 1 as well. When you're stressed, your phase 1 upregulates. To get phase 1 to work correctly, you do need B vitamins, you need glutathione, you need flavonoids, but those same vitamins also work on phase 2. So you're not going to take those and just upregulate phase 1, but you'll also be working on phase 2. The big part of phase 2 that a lot of people miss is that you need appropriate protein sources. To make the phase 2 substrates you need, you're going to need certain amino acids, and those amino acids become really, really important. So you want to make sure you balance phase 1 and phase 2. So if you're eating, nothing wrong with having a steak on occasion, but you want to make sure your phase 2 is upregulated with things like broccoli and cauliflower, things that are going to help you get rid of the toxins that you generate. Fruits and vegetables work in both phase 1 and phase 2, so they're really good, but you don't want to not have a protein source in your diet, because you're going to have a hard time detoxifying and getting rid of your natural toxins that are just generated from everyday living. So what are some warning signs of poor detox? This is an area, okay, so now we've identified detox. We all need to do it. We need to eat a well-balanced diet to detox every day. What are some warning signs that you're having problems with poor detox? One of the things I see, especially in patients sometimes, is they have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia-like symptoms. Sometimes these patients are overusing medications or have a lot of medications just from their traditional doctor. They're on a lot of medications, and you have to think immediately, this person may be having problems detoxing. In fact, every day I get humbled as a doctor as I see patients, but sometimes more than others. And you know, one of my patients I was seeing, and I was thinking very high level, why was he having fibromyalgia symptoms that were coming on? He was having cramping, feeling really bad. And so I did all these special tests, looking at all these different markers in his blood, and he comes back, he says, I'm a lot better. And I'm sitting there about to pat myself on the back going, good, you really got this patient feeling better. And he goes, yeah, my mom gave me this bottle of stuff, which I'm taking twice a day. And I looked, and I had failed to actually look at his detox pattern because his mom had given him a liver detox product with milk thistle and N-acetylcysteine and a lot of methionine and other things that support detoxification, especially phase 2. And what had happened is he was on a lot of medications from other providers, and his body had become toxic, and it had shut down his phase 1 and phase 2. And so he was on something, and lo and behold, he got better because I had forgotten the basics. You know, the basics of the body. You have to be able to eliminate your waste or it will build up, just like everything else. So that was a really important thing to remember. If you're on a lot of medications, you want to make sure that you are eating correctly and you're paying attention. So when my patients come in and say, I can't walk down the chemical aisle at the store, and that's because it really gives me a headache or I feel nauseous, that's a sign that there's problems there with detox. When people don't tolerate anesthesia well, there's a lot of load on the detox system when you give someone anesthesia. And if they have a paradoxical reaction to supplements that I normally don't expect, then I have to say, is this person detoxing correctly, or is there something wrong there? The other thing that I look at when I see someone, which is a large part of my practice now, is what are the genetics that we're seeing with detox. And so there's 3 that I think are, one is a phase 1, which is a cytochrome P450, it's CYP 1A2. This one is really important for getting rid of things like caffeine. And you can actually, unfortunately, know what your ability to get rid of caffeine is, because now I find out I can't have more than a couple of coffees a day because I'm a really poor metabolizer. And when I stress this system, I'm not getting rid of other toxins like aflatoxin, which is what we see as a mold toxin from corn. And this can be also very toxic to the system. So a lot of these things are doing double duty. It's not just getting rid of caffeine, but it's also helping us get rid of things like aflatoxin. And there's a lot of cytochrome P450s that actually take these substances that are fat soluble and move them over to a water soluble state by creating these intermediates. Then we have to say, okay, that's phase 1. What are some things in phase 2, genetic-wise, that we need to be looking at? One of those is COMT, and this is where we add a methyl group to the things like hormones. Estrogen is a big one, but we have to add a methyl group to make it water soluble. If we let it sit there and it's not made into a water soluble form, sometimes it will turn into a really free radical that can attack the DNA. So estrogen is not bad in and of itself, especially if you are able to get rid of it. But with COMT, we're able to add a methyl group. And if we have a poor COMT function, if we're not able to add a methyl group to estrogen, we really need to know that before we go on hormone therapy. So this is a phase 2 type reaction where we're adding a methyl group to a toxic substance, or one that could turn toxic, and helps us get rid of it. The other one is GSTP. This is where we add glutathione, which is probably one of the big detoxifiers in our body is glutathione. And so when we look at GSTP, we want to know, is this person able to take these intermediates and add glutathione? And that's a really important one to know, and that's why a lot of times I recommend to my patients to get their 23andMe data. The ancestry is just fine because it's all the same data. I plug it into an application, a web app called Pure Genomics. And by plugging it into Pure Genomics, I'm able to look at not only these, but other detox genes to see if not just the clinical symptoms the patients are having that I've already mentioned, but do they have some genetic component to this? And if they have some genetic component to this, there's interventions that do help quite a bit. Maybe they do need a little supplemental glutathione to get going. Maybe we want to make sure if they have COMT that they're not doing green tea or excessive caffeine or other things that crash the COMT, so it makes their detoxification even worse. If they have the cytochrome 1A2, I want to make sure they're not overdoing caffeine, because that's really going to affect some of their ability to detoxify. So when we look at this, there is a major genetic component to detoxification, and I think there's some things that we can take away from the whole detox thing, which is that we need to, one, reduce our incoming toxins, things like sugar. We want to make sure that we're reducing our xenobiotics, things that are not natural to our body. Things like xenoestrogens, which are estrogens in our plastics. That's really important. We want to make sure we heal the gut. Healing the gut becomes really important because a lot of times when we eat gluten and dairy and other things, which are kind of my pet foods to get rid of because they're inflammatory for a lot of people, but they create their own inflammation and create an inflammation pathway that creates more toxins. So healing the gut also allows us to focus on elimination, and that's really where part 2 comes in, is that if we're not able to have the liver excrete into the bile, and then the bile goes and it's emptied into the colon, then we're going to have trouble eliminating the toxins, and they recirculate. And when they recirculate, they just we start all over again. It's basically where we've spent a lot of energy to get rid of these toxins, and then we take them back on, and so it's a net zero proposition when we can't have regular bowel movement. So it becomes real important to heal the gut, because not only does it keep us from making toxin, it helps us to eliminate it. And quite honestly, we all should shoot for at least 2 bowel movements a day. And so when we're not having 2 bowel movements a day, we really need to look at what's going on with my gut, and what are some things such as probiotics. Do I need to be on more magnesium? What are the things that are going to help me with this elimination? So the other thing is kidneys. A lot of this we make into water-soluble toxins. If we're not drinking enough water, then we're concentrating our urine, and we're concentrating our toxins, and we're not able to flush. So if we're not making good bowel flow, if we're not, and bowel flow can be improved with taurine as a example of something that helps thin our bowel secretions and help us have bowel flow. If we're not having regular bowel movements, and if we're not drinking enough water, we're not able to flush our kidneys and get rid of the toxins. So the other thing is we want to boost the liver. Sometimes just boosting the liver is just eating broccoli and green leafy vegetables and eating whole fruits, not fruit juices, but whole fruits, and making sure we have fiber from those vegetables and those fruits, because fiber actually helps really boost the bacteria that are in our gut, that helps the liver with elimination. We also can look at doing some things like supplements. There's a good supplement I like to use called Liver GI Detox from Pure, which actually works on phase 1 and phase 2. I'd rather do it through diet and the things I've already mentioned, but sometimes in that initial stage when a patient's really sick, sometimes it's good to kind of help them, and I usually do for a bottle or 2, kind of get their detox system working as I try to heal the rest of their issues. And of course, I always want to get genetics and look at something like Pure Genomics, where I'm looking to see for $99, I can see a lot, especially how well they're methylating, which is one of the ways we detox is through methylation. I want to see how well they're able to add glutathione, how well they're able to get rid of free radicals with something like SOD2, which is also in Pure Genomics. And so when we talk about treatment, we're talking about really making sure their diet is straight, and that they're eating a well-rounded diet, making sure they have a complete protein source. That's really important, because phase 2 doesn't really work without that protein source. Some of the things that I see, some of the problems where I see people get in trouble with detox is that they like, hey, one of those is sauna. Basically, sauna is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I think sauna should be used. But if you haven't upregulated your detox, you're basically getting your fat to release toxins, and these toxins are hitting your bloodstream. And when they hit your bloodstream, they basically have to be gotten rid of. And so if you don't have an upregulated phase 2 to help get rid of these fat-soluble toxins, then you're just going to recirculate. And the fat was basically protecting you from these toxins, and now these toxins are able to go where in other places that they're not being protected by fat. So if we get rid of toxins through sauna, we really want to be drinking a lot of water, making sure we're having regular bowel movements, and making sure we're eating the right foods. The other area is weight loss. I have patients that really want to lose weight quickly. Who doesn't? Who wouldn't like to lose 10 to 20 pounds in a month? And I see all these advertisements. I lost 60 pounds in 3 months. This is very dangerous, because when you lose those fat cells, or those fat cells shrink, you don't actually lose fat cells, but they shrink, you release toxins. And if you're not eating and you're starving, or you're not eating enough food in your diet to upregulate both phase 1 and phase 2, those toxins redistribute into the brain and other areas. And so a lot of people feel terrible during weight loss because they're not getting rid of the toxins that are being released when their fat shrinks. And the funny thing is their toxic load goes up, their inflammation increases, so that when they get done through the diet or the weight loss program, they regain the weight because their toxic load is so high. So it's kind of counterproductive to actually lose weight if you don't have good detox. So those are some of the areas that we should be aware of, especially when we're doing anything like dieting. I really like to see my patients do at least 2 to 3 pounds at most a month. I think that's a healthy weight loss. I think that gives our body a chance to biotransform and eliminate. And so when we are doing things on a day-to-day basis, there's really not a need to go out there and I'm going to do a detox every 6 months, because we're every day helping our body get rid of toxins. And if our body feels like it's safe, and it's true, when the body feels like it's safe, the weight just naturally comes off. But why would your body let go of fat if it's protecting you from toxins? So when you start to lose fat and you release these toxins, your body's going to say, hey, we can't lose any more fat because we're getting toxic. So if you want to lose weight, or if you're having trouble losing weight, this is really important, understanding detox. I don't think it's a magical thing that we have to do. I think it's an everyday choice we have to make. And what kind of foods are we putting into our body? What kind of medications are we taking that may be affecting us? One of the ones that I really wanted to point out is proton pump inhibitors. So phase 2 is the part where we turn the intermediates, which are very toxic, into a non-toxic substance, and that's driven by protein and amino acids. Amino acids are really important. There's some essential amino acids there. And when we're on a proton pump inhibitor, it sabotages us making amino acids. It doesn't allow us to have hydrochloric acid to break down protein into its amino acid components. And now we're not able to detox. And so we have started seeing, for a lot of reasons, proton pump inhibitors associated with a lot of diseases: Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, you name it. I think we're seeing a lot more associations with it because it is breaking down a very necessary process in our body, which is making protein to repair, but also protein to detox. So these are just some of the basics of detox. I think I never understood it until I went into functional medicine. What did we mean when we said detox? What is this thing? And the main thing to remember is that it's biotransformation and elimination. And you have to do both: eating a well-rounded diet, getting sleep, and most of all, making sure you're drinking enough water and you're eliminating your waste each day, and you'll be set. So I will see if I can't see if we have any questions. So as my computer is not looking at questions or other things, I'm sorry if you I'll try to answer these after the video, and I thank you for spending your afternoon with me.